In this video, we're painting a mini. Shocker, I know. But not just any mini. If you've watched some of my recent videos, you know that I've been leading a group of friends through an RPG as their dungeon master. Recently, we wrapped on that campaign, and now I get to be a player, and you know what that means. Custom mini! Now, I'm gonna paint it, but who's gonna sculpt it? The only thing I've sculpted from scratch was that fleshy demon orb from Doom, so you know I don't have the chops, but I know someone who does. This is Alex from Magic Missile Minis. He's a content creator who has a knack for sculpting minis from scratch out of green stuff. And he's gonna help me bring my character to life. But first, we gotta bring him and you up to speed on who it is we're making.
I'm playing as a thief, and he is a Bothan. They're kind of like cat people. Their society really values information, so they have a lot of secrecy. It's a very covert kind of society.
They kind of look like cat dogs almost. Yeah. They've got like longer snouts as well. That's kind of sick.
Yeah.
Okay.
His parents are Imperial, so they're kind of the bad guys. And he is running away from home to start up his own career of, you know, being a bad guy. So he's kind of like a rich kid who is kind of discovering some kind of like individuality somewhere in the Outer Rim. That's kind of his vibe.
Super fun. What are like the specific design choices you're like, okay, when I picture this character, this is like the first thing that comes to mind?
He's probably dressed well, maybe in some kind of like one-piece suit. He has maybe like an eye scanner thing over like one eye. Because he's kind of like, you know, he seems kind of like
he's got all, he's kind of bougie.
Yeah.
Spy vibes. Okay. Yeah.
After that brief conversation, Alex whipped up this first concept art.
All right, I have the picture, and I love it. Yeah, you definitely nailed the pose. If I had 1 point of feedback, he has a very classic leg stance that a lot of like old school minis have, and it's just like this classic wide-legged pose. Imagine like an invisible wall that he's like sneaking around, you know, like if I can like be cringe for a little bit. You know, he's kind of good.
No, you're so good.
You know, maybe like
I can see that.
Here and he's sneaking around it kind of thing.
Shortly after that, we met in person to exchange the physical model.
Are we gonna like hug and like start making out, or like no, I don't know. You have sculpted me my Star Wars RPG character.
Yes. I based it as much as I could off of the drawing that I sent you and the notes that you gave me. So hopefully you can go ahead. I don't know if I'm proposing or
no, you are basically. We're married now.
That's how that works. That's how that works.
All right, I cannot wait. Oh, it's all green stuff. Look at it. Oh my gosh, it's a freaking cat man, dude. I love it. Oh my gosh. Okay, so obviously this is a sci-fi model and you do maybe mostly monster creatures, fantasy stuff. So what was the hardest part about doing this guy?
I spent so much time just trying to make all of like, the biggest thing I was focusing on was like the clothing folds and trying to make it as clean as possible. I definitely tend to focus on like, this miniature is really dirty or a zombie so that I can make mistakes. So this was like, it was like kind of fun to be like, all right, I need to be very precise, especially with like the gun there.
The thing that I'm most impressed by, and I want to give you the props for, is the face.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's not a normal humanoid face, although maybe your experience in monsters like really gave you some...
Yeah, doing a lot of D&D monsters and shit like that.
But it's like, good, it's really good.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I was really, when I did that, I was like, okay, cool. I can give this one to him. Great, we're good. Dude,
it looks so good.
I'm glad you like it.
I'm so excited to paint this mini.
Alex and I are doing an old school YouTube collaboration, so I'm not gonna rain on his parade and show a bunch of footage from the concepting and sculpting steps. If you wanna check that out, they'll be linked in a video down in the description below. Now that I have my very own Bothan, let's get him painted up. With the model primed, I got straight into painting. I'm gonna paint this model with a palette that's inspired by my Drakari 40K scheme, which is a lot of khaki and black. Our campaign for this Star Wars RPG is starting out on Tatooine. And given that the background story of this character is that he is an Imperial defector, I think the colors of black and tan make a lot of sense for Tatooine and the Empire. Alex clearly separated the cape into two different parts, the hood and the cape below. I love that choice, and it inspired me to split up the cloak into two different colors, khaki on top and eventually black on the bottom. Originally, I was going to paint the hood with pure orange-brown from AK Interactive, but when I put it in my mixing cup, I could tell it was way too saturated orange. So, to kill the color a little bit, I mixed in some whole red as well. This is a much better starting point for khaki than what we had previously. With that base coat done, I then took the exact same base coat and dumped out most of the paint and mixed in that khaki color to get my next highlight. Each time I get brighter, I use more and more thinner, drop down the PSI, and zoom in on the areas that I really want to focus on this hood. While I work on that highlight and also the next layer of pure khaki, let me tell you a bit about my character. If you're the kind of Star Wars fan who's only really seen the main big movies, you may think you don't know what a Bothan is, but actually they showed up in the very first movie, episode 4. There's a scene in A New Hope, or if you're a true Star Wars fan, Star Wars, where Mon Mothma is talking to all the rebels, and she's referring to the Death Star plans. In that scene, she says many Bothans died to bring us this information.
Many Bothans died to bring us this information.
The information being the Death Star plans that allowed the rebels to destroy it. Now, there's a bit of a joke debate in the Star Wars community that asks the question, was Mon Mothma referring to many Bothans, as in multiple Bothans, or was the individual's name Many Bothans? So in celebration of that funny joke, this character's name is Manny, as in short for Manfred, but also a reference to many. With the hood done, I wanted to move on to the cape, and I'm starting with a base coat of a satin black paint. I eventually want to airbrush the highlights on this cape, but personally I think it's just easier to do this all over base coat with a paintbrush. The future steps of highlighting are more surgical and pointed and have less of a chance of causing overspray when I don't intend to, but base coating is kind of all over and messy, and this detail is small enough to allow for me to paint it really quickly with a paintbrush and not have to waste too much time. With the cloak nicely base coated in a satin black color from TT Combat, I got onto doing some highlights. I'm using fairly diluted dark gray paint here, which allows me to drop the PSI down quite a bit and not cause any speckling. And the main value of that is that I can get really close to the model to aim at specific spots. I don't want too much gray to get all over the model, which is why I'm getting close as possible, because the further away I get, the more the airbrush spreads paint around and I lose some of that nice satin black paint. For the next highlight, I just mixed in some white ink into my current dark gray paint and did the same thing, but to a more extreme extent. I diluted the paint even more, got even closer, applied even less highlight, just to really make sure that I'm not getting rid of too much black, which then kind of kills the black effect and makes the cloak feel more gray than it does black. I feel like I did a pretty good job making sure I didn't run over too much black, but even so, the very last step with this is going to be taking some black ink, which is even a little glossy, and fixing up some areas where I want there to be more black, making this even more satin, which is going to deepen the black color, but also bring back some actual black paint just to make this cloak really sell as a black color. Because in the future, I want to put some dust on this cape because, you know, he's on Tatooine and that's going to kill the black effect even more. And so I kind of want to make sure I'm maybe overdoing it a little bit at this stage. With the airbrushing step complete, I can now move on to some paintbrushing to sharpen up some of the soft blends left by the airbrush. On the smaller, tighter little folds of fabric, I can paint in pure black paint to carve in some shadows. But on some of the larger, more rounded curves of fabric, I use a slightly lighter shadow color. One, because this approximates what real life would actually look like, but two, because this color is going to blend in better to my existing soft, buttery smooth airbrush blends. If I were to use black paint here on this big fold in the middle of the back of his cape, it would be way too stark and stick out like a sore thumb and require me to have to do a lot of paintbrush blending to soften it into this gray color. I also use some lighter colors to do some edge highlighting on these crispy edges of the cloaks, making sure to use a brighter edge highlight color where I had a brighter gray highlight color on the cloak and a darker edge highlight color where there was no gray highlight. It's important not just use the exact same highlight color for your edge highlighting on every single edge. You want some variety. And now we're essentially going to do the exact same thing, but with the hood. We need to sharpen up some of these details because the airbrush can't capture the sharpness of everything on the model. It's much better at handling the softer volumes. Like I mentioned earlier, this is the first time that I'm playing in an RPG as opposed to DMing it. I don't have a lot of experience doing, honestly, either, but I wanted to have a character with an interesting background to kind of act as, essentially. And so he is an Imperial defector, but more than that, he's a kid. He's 20-ish years old. His parents are high-ranking Imperial officials. The Bothan society is like super into intelligence and spying and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of figured that he wanted to rebel against his parents, and he did that in a Bothan way by stealing important Imperial intelligence and going to the Outer Rim with it, maybe as a bargaining chip or something else. I figured this would create a pretty cool fish out of water experience where he thinks he wants to experience criminal life, he thinks he wants to rebel against the Empire, but he is in for a potentially rude awakening or maybe a second coming as a rebel in the Outer Rim, totally away from his parents. I think that's kind of the beauty of role-playing games, is that you can kind of ham-fist a story into the campaign if you want to, or you can let the situations, the DM's ideas, other players' ideas of your character also kind of forge the way for you as well. With the hood and cape looking great, it's now on to his suit. Given the fact that this guy is an Imperial defector, I want to give him a gray suit. Now that may seem a little boring at first, but we can do some stuff with gray. First, we'll start with the base coat of brown and black mixed together. This will kind of give us a warmer, muddier gray that kind of works in the world of Tatooine and the dirty and dusty Outer Rim. From there, I'll mix in an Army Painter Fanatic paint called Necrotic Flesh, which is a very light green color. Not only is this going to increase the value or brightness of this dark brown into something of a gray, but it's also going to subtly introduce the color green into the scheme, which I'd like to do because I want to use green in a more saturated way later on in the paint job. You shouldn't necessarily be able to tell that I'm using green in the highlight of this gray. It's just going to make it more of an interesting highlight color. But I like to believe that having this green in this gray color makes the future green inclusions that I'm planning on feel as though they belong more in the paint scheme. Whether or not that's true is up for debate. As you can see in the footage, I'm just increasing that highlight more and more, and I do that by mixing in more of that necrotic flesh paint, as well as some of the khaki color from earlier from the hood, and also a little bit of white paint as well. With the gray suit looking nice and dingy, it's on to some of those smaller, less important details. And I kind of just go back and forth with reusing the black color from before and also a new reddish brown color for some of the bags and whatnot. These small details only really need a wash and a single highlight or two to really be considered done. They're not the main visual drivers of the miniature, so I don't need to put that much effort into them. All right, and with the smaller details done, it's now on to the all-important face. And I gotta be honest, I didn't really know what to do with this face. He's obviously some kind of human-lion hybrid, so he's gonna have fur in his face, and I struggle to paint animals in general. The randomness in patterning of animal fur is difficult to make a science of, which I tend to like to do with my brain. To make the face stand out more and to enunciate this fish out of water character that I have, I started with a cold gray with the idea of giving this guy white fur. As I was building up more and more highlights though, it just looked stranger and stranger, almost like he was a ghost. To attempt to resolve this, I took some of that same dark brown red that I used on the leather components and started to glaze it around the perimeter of his face and his cheeks, on the sides of his forehead, and then eventually just all over to see if it was going to do something. And it kind of wasn't doing anything. I attempted to take more of a Caucasian skin and paint around the mouth area like you see on some lions. And that was looking okay when I started to blend it with the gray bluish color of the face. And so I kind of just leaned into that and kept going. All right, and with the metallic details taken care of with a very simple silver layer over a black undercoat, we get into that green that I mentioned earlier in the video. And that is on his awesome eye spotter gauge power level over 9,000 thing. With a nice triad of electric green colors, I begin to develop a little bit of a blend from the outside of that lens to the center where his eye would be, to a nice chartreuse or highlighter yellow. It's a very small area to develop a harsh blend like this in, and so it just takes some time with very, very small amounts of paint that's very diluted to get a blend from one of those colors to the next.
There was also another detail on the gun as well that I didn't know what it was, and so I figured I would reuse this color right there. It's another detail that's higher up on the model, so this bright green color will draw some attraction upward, which is something that I want, and it'll make this green feel a little bit less weird if there's another instance of it somewhere else on the model. With that green detail complete, it's now time to work on the dustiness on the cloak, which I achieved with some dry pigments mixed with water that I then applied to the bottom edge of the cloak and also the boots. And this is always way too aggressive of an effect. And to dilute it to get the proper level of dustiness, I just take a sponge that's wetted in water and kind of sponge over the area a few times. After 2 or 3 attempts, it looks dilute enough to be realistic at the scale that we're dealing with. Now, all we have left is the base. To add some texture to the base, I decided to go with good old faithful dried out dirt. I spooned on some dirt onto the base and spread it around in a way that I thought looked good, and then with a drop or two of super glue thin, sealed it all in place. I also sealed in the dry pigment on his cloak. Whoops! I then got on to painting the base, but I didn't wait long enough for the super glue to dry. RIP that brush. When the super glue was actually dry, I base coated the whole base in kind of an obnoxious orange color. With that color dry, we can attempt to bring this base back into some kind of reality with an all-over dry pigment wash. Now that the dry pigment wash is actually dry and looking suitably dusty, we can toss on a few tufts, paint that base rim black, and then Manny is finally complete. Here is the finished Manny crew core, my character for my new Edge of the Empire RPG campaign. Huge shout out to Alex from Magic Missile Minis. It is always such a treat to get to have people sculpt my fun ideas for miniatures and then to get to paint them. That's honestly the best part of having a large YouTube channel, is that I get to realize my ideas for models. Make sure you guys go check out Alex's video. I have it linked down in the description below if you want to see him concept up the model and also sculpt it. He is an awesome YouTuber, and it was a lot of fun to collab with him in this way. It's been a long time since I've collabed with anyone, so it was fun to get to do that again. I'm excited to have a growing collection of Star Wars-esque RPG minis that are painted in my collection, and I can't wait to get to use them. Dan, my DM, if you're watching this, you can use my models whenever you want. If you guys like videos about painted miniatures and RPGs, I'll have another one linked at the end of this video that I think you are gonna like. If you like my channel and you want to support it, there are a number of ways to do that, all things linked down in the description below. But most notably, you can check out my web store, miniac.co, for models that I sell and also tools that I sell, like the cutting mat that you saw in this video, a brush coffin that holds your brushes, and also other similar shaped tools. If merchandise and stuff like that isn't your thing, I also sell miniatures on that website, 75mm and 32mm models, and also a bust as well. These 75mm models have courses that come with them that teach you how to paint the models. And when you buy the model and the course together, you get 20 bucks off. These are not just courses that show you the step-by-step, they also teach you all the skills necessary to do what the instructor is doing. We have several different kinds of instructors, myself obviously, but Ninjan from YouTube, and also Benjamin Cantor, an amazing, highly accoladed painter. That's it for this one, guys. Subscribe or die! And most importantly, don't forget to paint my